All right. So yeah, let's wait for a couple of people to jump on. Maybe it's quite fast. Usually people get on about a minute or so when once they get the notification. What's the weather like in England now?
It's quite nice actually. Yeah, it's about 20, 21 today.
Yeah.
Nice and sunny. Weather's been all right actually. Typical. As soon as we've gone into lockdown, it's been good weather.
Great weather.
Normally, as everyone knows, it normally rains in England all the time.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
the weather's actually been quite nice of late. Yeah, so I've been able to get out and have the odd bike ride and things like that to
All right.
get out
Good.
there. So that's good.
If you're ready, let's start. I'll play a video and then we ready to go. All right, it's that time of the day for Sports Stories with Sasi, and my special guest today is a good friend of mine. We've met some time ago, former Wales assistant manager, Sunderland assistant manager, full-time or caretaker at Fulham, caretaker at Crystal Palace, my very good friend, Kit Symons.
Hello, Sasi.
Right, Kit, how are things with you now? I know your last assignment was with Chris Coleman in China in Hebei Fortune. You've been back for a year, almost a year, haven't you?
That's right. Yeah, we came back in May last year, and so just been sort of doing a few bits and bobs and waiting for the next opportunity to come along. Really.
Well, what's the situation like in England now with the lockdown, of course?
Yeah, so obviously it's I think it's pretty similar across the world. It's difficult times for everybody, and sort of staying safe is the most important thing. But football across the world is sort of shut down at the moment. So from a job point of view, there's not too many jobs coming up at the moment. But I've been doing a bit of research, talking to a lot of people. So I'm very hopeful when things start up again that we can get back in again soon.
Excellent. A lot of people are just jumping on the live stream here. So we are live on Facebook. We are live on Twitter and YouTube as well. So I'd like to say thank you to Chris Chapman, Tom Cunliffe, Leon Gumpert is also joining us, Utai Buna from Melbourne, Australia, Vimal Sharma from India also joining us, Tran from Vietnam. Thank you, Sivaraj from Singapore, and Alvin Yo. Thank you guys all for tuning in. As we go along, I'm sure more people will jump on. I would like to start, Kate, with your playing career, because you're a defender, and you had a very illustrious career. I can say that you probably played about 400 over games in the English top flight. Where did it all start for you? Because how were you like as a young boy? What was football like for you?
I think like a lot of young boys, like football was sort of everything for me, really. I remember from I think I was 8 years old, watching the FA Cup final, Arsenal Man United, 1979, running around the back garden. I was a big Arsenal fan, thinking I was going to grow up to be like Liam Brady one day. Didn't quite go to plan, obviously, but I became a head it and kick it centre half. But no, fantastic. Yeah, so football from, like I say, my earliest memories are about 7 years old, 8 years old, and it's always played a huge part of my life. And it's the only career, the only job I've ever known, working within football, and I've been very lucky to do that.
Growing up, who were your influence? Did you come from a football family?
Well, my dad died when I was 7, but he used to be a referee. So never played really to any level, my dad, but he used to referee. So it's sort of football in the blood, I suppose. But no one else. All my family are Welsh, and most of my cousins and uncles were rugby players. So quite a few of them liked football, but there's no real sort of history of football within the family at all.
Give me 1 second because I'm trying to make this broadcast so that people can actually share it. Just 1 second. Edit privacy. We make it public. Great. Okay, that's great. Okay. Yeah. So, but I'm pretty sure that when you're growing up, you had football heroes like all of us playing football. Who were your
definitely
heroes early on?
Well, as I sort of alluded to earlier, Arsenal was my team. So I remember that the great Arsenal team of sort of like 1979, 80. It was like David O'Leary, Liam Brady, Graham Ritz, players like that, Frank Stapleton. These were players who I sort of like were hero worshipped as a young boy, sort of growing up. So yeah, mostly the Arsenal players from that era really. And then moving on slightly, I remember being a young player and I used to go on trials up to Arsenal quite a bit. Been up there one day and sitting in the paddock, which is a little bit near the tunnel in Highbury, the old Highbury. Yeah. And I was sitting next to Tony Adams' dad, and I think Tony was 17, maybe just 18, a young player playing in Arsenal first team. And I think I was like 13, 14 myself, so he's only like 3 or 4 years older than me.
Yeah.
I thought, wow, this could be me one day. I was sitting next to his dad, who was a lovely man, chatting to him. And then that sort of, I remember that clicking in my mind, thinking, 3 or 4 years' time, this dream could become real. And, I was lucky enough, I signed for Portsmouth, and it did.
Was Tony Adams already showing good talent back then when he was young?
Yeah, I mean, like I say, he was a young boy, 17. I think he was still 17 when I was seeing him then. And just the level of maturity that he showed as a young player was just incredible. But incredible. So even then, straight away, obviously I was a young boy, but I had a good knowledge of football, and you could tell straight away he was going to be a top player.
You started your career in Portsmouth. How did that come about? Did you have to go on trial, or because you were part of their system? How did you get scouted?
Yeah, well, I got scouted actually. I was playing. I was brought up in Basingstoke, so I was playing for my school team against another school, and unbeknown to me, the sports master of the other school, who was the referee of the game as well, was actually he was a scout for Portsmouth, and they had like a satellite centre in Basingstoke. So we were playing the game. I remember in my school we won a penalty, and it was typical old school playing fields, like wooden goalposts and mostly mud, not a lot of grass on the pitch. And the penalty spot was actually like a crater, a little hole. So I put the ball behind like the crater. And like I say, this guy who was the referee, Mick Critchell, his name is, he was the sports teacher of the other school. He went, no, and made me put it actually in the crater to take the penalty. So I remember looking at him thinking, you mind him up there? And then obviously I'm thinking, if I kicked it too hard because of the crater, it was going to go up and over the bar. So I placed it to the corner sort of quite gently, but obviously then the crater took it up and it went over the keeper's hand and I scored. So I gave him a little smile as I walked back. And obviously at this stage, I didn't know he was a scout for Portsmouth. So after the game, he came to find me and I thought, I'm in trouble here. And he actually said, listen, I do some scouting for Portsmouth. Would you like to come along to the satellite centre on a Wednesday evening? Which I did. And at that time, Alan Ball was the youth team manager at Portsmouth. And so quite often he would come down on a Wednesday night and help with the coaching. And, so as a young kid, then I was just like first year senior school. So I was 11 years old and I was getting coached by, Alan Ball, like a World Cup winner. It was incredible. And Bawley was brilliant with us kids. He was so enthusiastic and passionate. And was brilliant. I think we were really, really good with us. And so that's how I first got into professional football, and I started with Portsmouth. As I said then, as I got a bit older, because I was from a single family, my dad died when I was young. And so my mum, Portsmouth wanted to sign me. And my mum, she didn't know a lot about football, but she's obviously really good with me. And she was like, I don't think you should sign until you look at a couple of other clubs and make your mind up, and then you can decide. But if all you know is Portsmouth, I don't think it's the best way to make that decision. So sort of reluctantly a little bit, I I went to Southampton for a little while, which is obviously local rivals, but it was close enough for me to get for training. And I went there for about 6 months and enjoyed that. Really good setup. I went up to Arsenal. The Arsenal scout actually phoned up one day.
Yeah.
An old scout, a guy called Tony Gibb, who's passed away now. And my mum didn't believe him. She thought, because I'm an Arsenal fan, she thought it was one of my uncles winding me up. So she hung the phone up on him about 3 times before she actually accepted that it was an Arsenal scout, and he got me to go up for trials. So I went up to Arsenal for 4 or 5 during my school holidays, 4 or 5 times, and loved it up there. But in the end, at like 14 and a half, Portsmouth was my first love, and I decided to sign schoolboy forms for them, and it was proved to be a good decision.
Yeah, you played 160 games for them, scored 10 goals. And what was it like back then? Because this was in 1988. The Premier League was not in full swing at the moment. It wasn't the Premier League. It was the English Old First Division, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so it was Portsmouth in the second tier. In fact, I think the season I signed, I came in as a YTS, like an apprentice. They just got promoted, so they were in the top flight just for the one season. They got relegated after that. And then when I broke through, I made my debut as a 17-year-old. I remember this is going back, obviously, a long time now, Sasi,
yeah,
as you know. So I remember making my debut, and Alan Knight, our goalkeeper, who's like a Portsmouth legend and still works for the club now. I was a bit nervous, so I went out to the toilets, and Alan Knight was sitting on the toilet having a fag, having a cigarette before the game. So that I think that tells you what it was like back then.
And did you get into the team straight away? Was it how hard was it for you to get into the Portsmouth team? Obviously, you were talented because you were, given a professional contract, and as you know, it's everyone's dream, every boy's dream to become professional. You got there. And what was your journey like getting to the professional setup? Like your first game, do you remember your debut?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, well, I've got to be honest. I had quite a few strokes of luck along the way to get me to that stage. I remember it was my last year as a schoolboy, so I was still at school doing my exams, and I think, I'm pretty sure I was like touch and go whether I was going to be offered an apprenticeship at Portsmouth. And there was the youth team, so the under-18s, the full-time boys, played Tottenham away. Tottenham were the best team in the South East Counties League, it was then. Played Tottenham away, and suddenly a few of the Portsmouth players, there were injuries and illness, so I had to call up some of our schoolboys. And like I say, I was on the cusp where I was going to get an apprenticeship. And I went and played for the youth team, Portsmouth youth team, under-18s, against Tottenham. And they were the best team in the league, and we got beat 6-0. And I got given a runaround by, I remember, Philip Gray and Ian Gilzine, Alan Gilzine's son. And I got smashed about. I was a young, skinny 15-year-old kid, got beaten up, smashed about. We lost 6-0, and I come off afterwards, and I thought, well, that's me done now. I'm never going to get an apprenticeship after that. And it was actually straight after that was a Saturday. On the Monday, I got a phone call saying they wanted to take me on. And I think it was as much because we got beaten heavily, but I kept going. And I really sort of had a go and gave them a best shot. Obviously, at that age, so I was 15 playing against 17-year-olds, and the physical differences were huge. And I got bashed around and beaten up and run ragged, basically. But they could see something in me. I don't know, like I kept going and gave it my all and never gave up. And so that got me my apprenticeship. I'm convinced of that. So that's a slice of luck. And then also, when I first signed it, so I went straight into Portsmouth against a 16-year-old. And the centre half for the reserves, a guy called Darren Angel, whose brother Brett played a lot of league games in England. Was a very good player. His brother ruptured his Achilles, so he was out for the season. So although I was lucky to get an apprenticeship at all, I suddenly went in. I was playing all the youth games. Also, there was no other centre half, so I had to step up and play all the games in the reserves as well. So I had so much exposure playing against some top players in the reserve setup then. And so I got sort of thrown in the deep end a little bit. But again, I sort of either sink or swim, and I stood up and had a go. I was a tall, skinny 16-year-old at this stage. Still getting smashed around a little bit, but got an unbelievable experience, and that without doubt helped me to go on and become a player. As for like first team, I made my debut in I think it was the Symons Cup. It was called then. Billy Gilbert was a centre half, came off, did his ribs, and I was sub, and I got thrown straight on quite early into the game. And then my actual league debut was against Leicester away, and that happened to be, we lost the game 2-1, and that was Alan Ball. So my league debut was Alan Ball's last game as Portsmouth manager. He got sacked after the game. And then they brought in John Gregory, became manager. I played a couple of games under him. Then Frank Burrows came in, a couple of games under him. I was now just 19, 20. So I made my debut as a 17-year-old. And I only played a handful of games for the next couple of years. And I was getting a little bit disillusioned and probably looking to go somewhere because I was desperate to play first-team football. And then Jim Smith came in as manager. And I played most of the pre-season games under Jim. And then I remember with our first game of the season, we played Blackburn away, just as Blackburn had started getting a lot of the money under Jack Walker. Mm-hmm. And so we ran out for the first game of the season. All the Pompey fans, Jim just threw a load of the kids in. So it was myself and Andy Orford, Darren Anderton, Darryl Powell was sub. So we had, I was now 20, those boys were all 19, so we had suddenly 3 or 4, 5 young players all around the first team. The Portsmouth fans were like, who are this lot? They didn't even know half of their own team. We were all like snotty-nosed kids, basically. But that season I played every game, and we got to the FA Cup semi-final against Liverpool. So, and I never looked back after that. From being sort of disillusioned and maybe looking to move, suddenly Jim Smith came in, and that's when my career really kicked off.
Let's talk about that semi-final match against Liverpool. Who were you up against?
So the first game, we went to replay. The first game, which was at Highbury as well, which was just the most incredible football experience of my life. Like running out, obviously I'm an Arsenal fan, as I said, to coming out at Highbury, and all the Pompey fans were down the clock end. As we came out, the ticker tape went up in the air. It was incredible. Best football experience, or is up there with my international debut. So probably on a par with that. Most incredible day ever. So that game, I was marking Ian Rush, who obviously I played for with Wales as well. So and we drew that game 1-1. Went to replay at Villa Park, and then I was marking Dean Saunders in the second game, who I also played for with Wales. Yeah. And we drew that 0-0, and then lost on penalties.
I want to talk about Wales now, because that's a good segue. You mentioned Wales because in 1992 you were called up for the Welsh national team, and tell us about that, because that must have been a real proud moment for you. Do you remember the exact point? Where did you get the call, or was it a letter back then? How did you get your call up?
Yeah, no, it was a phone call. Yeah, and I remember I was back at home. I was obviously playing at Portsmouth at the time. I was back at home for the weekend, actually, and Terry Yorath, who was the manager, actually called up. And it was a Sunday morning, I think, and my mum shouted upstairs, "It's Terry Yorath on the phone." I'm like, "Yeah, all right." Nice one. Again, thinking she was winding me up, and sure enough, it was Terry. Yeah, and I mean that was like during my sort of debut season, if you like, my first full season at Portsmouth. So it was just the most incredible time. We played Republic of Ireland away. But again, this going back a long time, and Republic of Ireland used to play at Lansdowne Road, but it was being rebuilt, turned into the Aviva. So that's to play at the Royal Dublin Showground. So I remember I got the letter then through about making my international debut, and it said I needed to have a tetanus jab because it's the Royal Dublin Showground, where the horses go. So because of all the horse muck on the pitch, I had to have a tetanus jab. So I'm like, that's international football. What's going on? But yeah, it was brilliant. It was fantastic times. And so my debut was Republic of Ireland. And we won 1-0. They were on a really long, unbeaten run, the Irish. And we won 1-0. Mark Pembridge scored the goal. Yeah, and I was marking Niall Quinn, playing against Quinny. And they had some really good team out Ireland then. And so fantastic.
Were you overawed by the occasion? I mean, obviously, as a young boy, your dream was to play for your national team, and you are now in the dressing room with some of the great names there. Who was in that dressing room when you were there?
Oh, it's fantastic, yeah. So the Welsh dressing room then. So when I first joined, it was like Neville Southall in goal. Ian
Everton
Rush,
keeper. Yeah.
Yeah. Ian Rush, Dean Saunders, Mark Hughes, Gary Speed, all players like this. Barry Orme was the captain. We had a really good squad of players. And then just a few years after that, obviously, then Ryan Giggs came through. So it was, tremendous squad. And I was talking about being overawed. I was sort of like, when we were sitting talking, I was a bit in awe of these boys, I think, to be honest. But back then, when I actually played, so going back to the semi-final, I wasn't massively nervous. I was excited, but I wasn't that nervous. I think when you're really young, you're a bit too stupid to be nervous. So I certainly was anyway.
Yeah.
And it's the same for like my international, early days playing for Wales. I think I got more nervous maybe as I got a bit older and I started to understand what it actually meant. So we lost that semi-final, like I say, on penalties. And I remember all the other Portsmouth players swapped shirts with the Liverpool. I wouldn't swap shirts. I had the raving ump at the end of the game. We'd lost on pens and I wasn't happy. And I wouldn't swap shirts. So no, I want to keep my Portsmouth shirt. I don't want a Liverpool shirt. Why would I? All the other players swapped, and I wouldn't swap. But then I'm thinking, then I calmed down a bit, and I'm like, well, yeah, we lost in the semi-final this year. I'll get to the final next year. Because you're young and stupid. And I never got even close again after that. That was the closest I ever got by a long way. So unfortunately, I never played in a cup final. So it was, it's a bit, but it's, like I say, so I do honestly believe when you're young like that, you're too young and naive maybe to be really nervous, and it can help you.
Your next move was to Manchester City in 1995. So how did it all come to an end at Portsmouth? Did you run out of your contract, or they just thought that they needed to move you along?
No, what actually happened was Jim Smith got sacked. So like I say, I started really playing regularly when Jim came in. I played every game, became team captain. I loved Portsmouth. I was there for like 8 years. But as soon as Jim got sacked, I was linked with a few other clubs to move for the previous year or two. But didn't, I was quite happy to stay there at the time. I certainly wasn't pushing for a move. But as soon as Jim Smith got sacked, then I thought for myself, this is the time for me to go now. I had the highest respect for Jim. He did so much for my career. And I thought he got treated really badly at Portsmouth and certainly didn't deserve to get sacked. And so that was what pushed me really then. I decided I wanted to leave. Terry Fenwick took over from Jim. And that was fine. I got on well with Terry, but I think he wanted to make his stamp on the team and on the club. He knew I was sort of like Jim's boy, so he was quite happy for me to go and use the money from my move to fund new players. And he knew that I wanted to leave. So, so that's how that sort of came about. And then I played the first game of the season for Portsmouth because obviously they were Championship. I came home after the game and Alan Ball phoned me up, who was the Man City manager.
Yeah.
And they played Hearts away, their last pre-season game before the Premier League started, which started the following Saturday.
Yeah.
They got beat 5-0 by Hearts on that Saturday afternoon. Portsmouth, I just played for Portsmouth. We just won at home. I came home after the game, phone rang. It was Borley. He said, I want you to come up on Monday and sign. I want you to play next week in the Premier League against Tottenham. So I was like, oh, right, okay. So I was also talk at the time of Sheffield Wednesday as well. But something fell through with that. I think it was linked to another player leaving or something, the move there. I went up, sat down with Borley, literally offered me a contract. I signed it and I didn't go back to Portsmouth. That was it. Signed for Man City and played the following week. Played Tottenham at home at Main Road.
Man City was a very different side back then. They didn't have the money or the influence like what they have in the last decade or so. But what was it like to be a Manchester City player in a city where United was getting a lot of success at the time?
It was I mean, I obviously I moved from Portsmouth, which is like Portsmouth's a brilliant club, and they've got incredible support, Portsmouth. And I used to go to all that like supporters dues, things like that. But I wasn't prepared for just how big a club Man City was. It still is, obviously. I went up there. I remember, like, literally my first week, they said, "Will I go to a supporters do?" So I went, "Yeah, no problem." And it was Prestwich and Whitefield, one of the local branches. And there were 400 people there. It was ridiculous. It was phenomenal. And this was just a local branch of a supporters club. And it really did sort of take me back a little bit, the size of the club. And just also the city, how football mad it was. And obviously, you're either a red or a blue.
Yep.
I remember my bin men, my dustmen were like Man City fans. So if we won, they'd take anything I put out there. If we lost, they wouldn't take my rubbish. And bearing in mind we got relegated that season, I had piles of rubbish. But it was mad. And even like I remember the traffic police. So the police up in Manchester, the Princess Parkway, the big main road going into the city centre. I got told by a friend who was a traffic policeman that even the police, they had charts on the wall, and the Man City police would try and pull over as many United players as they could.
Really?
And the United police and they had a chart on their wall. So that's literally how bonkers the city is for football. But it was brilliant. Like I say, I loved Manchester. I loved the football club. It's a real shame. It was during a really, really tough period for the club, and in the end, I sort of suffered as well. My first season in the Premier League, I played really well. We got relegated on the last day of the season against Liverpool. Drew with Liverpool, but I played well. But after that, the second and my final season, I had a bad time. The club was obviously struggling as well, and I think I carried too much. I became captain of the club. I think I carried too much responsibility on my shoulders, to be honest, and it really affected the way I played. I mean, we had turnover managers. I was there 3 years, played under 6-7 different managers. You know, Asa Harford, I think, was caretaker 3 times. You know, I had loads of different managers, and the club was just a mess.
So it did look like as though 3 seasons there, while you had your great times, but it was, suppose it was a very tough time in your career. You would say that? Would you sum up your Manchester City career like that? Yeah,
definitely. Well, I mean, to be honest, realistically, what I should have done was after the end of the first season, like I said, we did get relegated. I probably should have looked to move then because I played well and I could have stayed and gone to another Premier League club.
Did you get any offers?
Well, I didn't really have an agent at the time.
Okay.
There were thinking I should have maybe pushed for it, but again, also in my head, I felt that I should be loyal, and I was part of the team that had got relegated. I then wanted to be part of the team that got them promoted. So that was what was going on in my mind, and I thought, you know, I should stay loyal and this, that, and the other. And most other players sort of abandoned ship at that stage, and then the turnover of players was huge. So again, maybe I was a little bit naive and I should have left then. But in some ways, I'm glad. Although it sort of like hurt me a little bit professionally, I'm still glad I stayed and decided to try and fight and try to do what I thought was the right thing.
Then you moved on. Next stop was Fulham, because this is a club that you have a rich history with. Tell us about that move. Did you have options to move to other club, or Fulham was just it was?
Yeah, no. Well, I'd spoken to Sheffield United. Steve Bruce had just gone in as Sheffield United manager, and I'd spoken to Sheffield United, and they were obviously in the Championship, and Fulham were then in League One, the league below. So I spoke to Sheffield United, and sort of like the money was all agreed. And then Chris Coleman phoned me up, who was my mate. We played for Wales together in the under-17s. Cookie phoned me up and just said, "Listen, mate, I know you're out of contract at City. We want you to come down here. I'm with Kevin Keegan." He passed the phone to Kevin. And I said, listen, I've spoken to Sheffield United, they're a league higher than you. He said, just come down and see us. That's all I'm asking. Before you make your mind, just come down and see us. I went, yeah, okay. So I went down to Fulham. And like I say, Sheffield United was a league higher. And they were actually offering me more money. But I went into Fulham and it just felt right. It felt really good. They didn't have their own training ground at the time. They were using Bank of England place at Richmond Park. They didn't have their own training ground, and it was like a League One club, but they were trying to build. Obviously, Kevin Keegan was the manager. Al Fayed was the owner. And Kevin sold me this dream of, or made a promise to me that the club would be in the Premier League in 5 years' time. And I believed it. I bought into it and I believed it. I signed, and then we did it in 3 years. I had 2 promotions in 3 years at Fulham, and got into the Premier League. So again, it just felt like it was the right thing to do, and I sort of went with my gut instinct, if you like, a little bit. I could have signed for Sheffield United. I wouldn't have had to move house. I could have easily commuted between where I was living and Sheffield. It would have been an easy commute. But I thought Fulham. I liked the idea there was this plan in place and it was a project, and I wanted to be part of that.
Who were your teammates at Fulham? Who were your teammates at Fulham at the time? Anyone notable?
So Chris Coleman was the big signing.
Yeah.
And obviously Kirky I knew really well. Then Mike Taylor in goal, who was Northern Ireland international, good player. Rufus Brevitt at left back. Simon Morgan, Paul Pescasolido was striker there. Then we signed. After me, we signed a few. Paul Bracewell actually was there. He was player assistant with Keegan, ex-Everton boy. We signed Jeff Horsfield and Barry Hales. Steve Finnan came, signed for us. We signed him. It was a brilliant signing. Finn's obviously went on to play in the Champions League final with Liverpool and World Cups with the Republic. It was a good side, and it started building that. So under Keegan, we did have a good side and we had good players, but we had an unbelievable team spirit. And a lot of those games, League One was tough, and you'd go, away games on a Tuesday night, and there'd be tough, horrible places to play. But we'd roll our sleeves up. We had some good players, but we had boys who would fight for the club and the badge. And we won a lot of games, scruffy 1-0 wins or whatever, as well as then we played some great football at times. Jeff Horsfield and Barry Howes and Pess scoring great goals. But we could mix it as well. We had a real strong spirit within the club, and that was probably my favourite year playing football, that first year at Fulham under Keegan. And I scored 11 goals as well.
Really? As a centre-back?
Yes. I scored 11 goals from centre-back, yeah. So,
wow.
And I remember actually, Kevin Keegan was fantastic for me. I signed after 2 relegations in 3 years at Man City. Signed for Fulham, really low to start with, but Kevin was just a brilliant manager, and he knew how to keep your feet on the ground as well. Like I said, I ended up scoring 11 goals that season, and we were training, and I was on a run. I think I scored about 5 goals in 10 games. So I was on an incredible run. For me, I didn't, so I was a little bit cocky and sort of loving life at the time. And we were doing a training. There's 2 teams playing, and my team were on the outside. And Kevin was walking around. Frank Sibley was refereeing the game. Kevin just used to like walking around the training. So I'm on the outside, like I say, a bit cocky and all this. And Kevin walking past saying, "Playing well, son, playing well." So I was like, "Yeah, thanks, boss." And he said, "Yeah, you're having a bit of a purple patch." So I was like, "Yeah, I suppose I am a little bit." And he keeps walking. He said, "I had a purple patch once." I went, "Yeah, really?" He said, "Yeah, mine lasted 15 years. And he just kept on walking. I was like, I didn't know what to say. Supposedly I scored 5 goals in 10 games, but I mean, he was European Footballer of the Year twice and had the most incredible career.
Yeah.
So that was his way of just saying, you're doing all right, but just keep your feet on the ground, keep your mouth shut and do your job. So that was a very valuable lesson I learned. And for me, that was brilliant man management. And the way he did it was incredible. Killed me. He absolutely killed me. It was brilliant.
But was that a record? 11 goals by a centre back in the league?
No,
because I don't remember any centre back scoring double digit in a season.
No, years before me, there was a centre half at Fulham who's a Fulham legend, a guy called Roger Brown, and I think he scored 12 goals from centre half one season for Fulham.
Wow.
So yeah,
That's
and
very
in fact,
valuable.
so I was on 11 goals. I was on 11 goals, and it went into the last game of the season. We played Preston at home. We'd already won the league, and there's everything. But Kevin, literally the day before the game, had he was on, did some interview, and he'd come out and said he was taking the England job. So Al Fayed flew in on his helicopter to training and everything, and talked to the players. So Kevin didn't take the last game of the season.
Yeah.
Or he was there, but I don't think he was actively taking it. It was all a big fuss about it. But he knew I was on 11 goals, so he said to me going into the last game, "You're on penalties today if we get any pens."
Yeah.
So I was like, okay. But it happened to be there's a guy called Paul Moody, who's like one of my mates, great lads. It was his last game for Fulham. He was leaving after this game, and we played Preston at home. I remember it. And Moods has scored. It's his last game ever for Fulham, and he'd scored 2 goals in the game. We're 2-0 up, and we get a penalty. And so I was on it to equal Roger Brown's record, but Moods, it's his last game, and he's a big lump as well, so I wasn't going to argue with him. so he took the penalty, scored it, got his hat-trick. So he finished his last ever game for Fulham was a hat-trick at home, Craven Cottage. I couldn't sort of deny him that.
Yeah, that was fair.
And also, I would have equalled the record, but one of the goals I got given, I remember it, Millwall at home, I went up for a header at the back post. I sort of I smashed the defender in the back of the head, as you did in those days.
Yeah.
And so it's more an own goal. I think I headed the back of his head, and he headed it in. So I got given the goal, but I think it was an own goal, if I'm perfectly honest. So I would have felt bad if I'd have equalled the record for Roger Brown, knowing that one of these goals was an own goal, really. It wasn't really mine. So
you're a real gentleman.
Records, I scored at home to Millwall, but in all honesty, it was an own goal. So
real gentleman, like you are. You moved on to Crystal Palace next, another big club. 3 seasons with Fulham, and then you moved on to Crystal Palace. Why Crystal Palace?
Well, it's just that Tigana was now Fulham manager, so we got promoted under Kevin. Then Paul Bracewell took over. We had a sort of mid-table season, and then John Tigana came in for Fulham, and that was probably some of the best football I've ever been privy to be part of. The way the team played, they brought in Louis Saha was incredible. Brought in Lee Clark. Lee Clark signed under Paul Bracewell. Was brilliant in that team. Sean Davis was coming to the fore. Morte was there. We had a really, really strong team. Played some brilliant football. Then we got promoted to Premier League. So I was then in and out of the team. So I wasn't playing all the time. I just wanted to play football. I was getting, I think it was like 31 then, I think, and desperate to play week in, week out. And I wasn't getting that opportunity now in the Premier League. So I wanted to leave. So I'd signed for Fulham for as a free transfer on very modest money. And helped the club get 2 promotions. So kept saying to Ghana, at least you can do is let me go and play football.
Yeah.
And he was brilliant to Ghana. He's a really good guy. But he knew I was an important part of... he understood, like I say, the football was incredible under him. But we had that same team spirit that we had under Keegan that I spoke about. And he knew that was important. I was a big part of that with the lads and stuff like that. And he really knew that. So he wanted me. I was good to have around. I was good to be, come in and out of games when needed. Knew I wouldn't let anyone down. And he wanted me to be about and part of it. But I was just desperate to go and play. So I had to keep knocking his door to.
How was he like as a manager, Tigana? Because a lot has been said about his managerial style. Like he's actually quite good, apparently. Would you agree with that?
Well, certainly the season we won promotion, we all thought he was a genius. But what he did, a lot of it was the recruitment, the way we trained. We were very fit, very organised. But then there was so much talent. So I think Louis Saha that season put in the best performance over the course of a season I've ever seen anyone give. He was literally unplayable. He was phenomenal. So we had the likes of him, them like Boa Morte and players like that. Brilliant to play in. The teams just couldn't live with us. Um, yeah, so and he changed our the way we trained, the way we lived our lives as well. It was the first time that it really come in about the diet and the body fats. Everything was just spot on, really, and we all sort of thrived in that environment. So he was excellent for us at Fulham. Yeah, he's still very well thought of at Fulham.
How was your time in Crystal Palace? Who was the manager then? Who signed you there?
Well, actually, I said Steve Bruce tried to sign me at Sheffield United. Steve Bruce was the manager of Crystal Palace and was trying to sign me for a little while. And then literally the week I went to sign, Steve Bruce took the job at Birmingham, and Trevor Francis came in as the Crystal Palace manager. So
Right.
I signed for Trevor Francis, but the deal was being done under Steve Bruce. Actually, I nearly played for Steve Bruce 3 times. Nearly played for him at Huddersfield, at Sheffield United, and then at Crystal Palace. But as it happens, never kicked the ball for him. But he was nearly my manager on 3 occasions. So I signed under Trevor. And it was, I love Crystal Palace. I got really fond memories. My one big regret about Crystal Palace was I picked up an injury quite soon into going there. And that basically was what finished my career. So unfortunately, the Palace fans, I felt I still had a lot to offer at that time. But once I picked up this bad injury, it got misdiagnosed. I had a couple of operations that I didn't need. Kept breaking down, obviously. It was out for a long time. And then they found the original injury. They sort of rescanned it and then compared it to the original scans. And there was a tear in my hip joint, which had been missed for like a year. And I had a adductor tenotomy, a hernia, left side Gilmore's groin done again. I didn't need these operations because they found out what the problem was, but it was missed in the original scan. So that's ultimately finished me, really. I got back playing, but could hardly move. And it's a horrible feeling when you're like, your brain's telling you to do things and your feet just won't do it.
Yeah, exactly.
It was horrible. So, it wasn't a nice time. I was relatively young. I was still only sort of 33, but my feet just wouldn't move, and it was horrible.
You became the caretaker manager for Crystal Palace in 2003. How did that happen?
Yeah. Well, like I say, I'd come back from this injury, but I wasn't moving particularly well, so I was sort of in and out of the team. Steve Kemp was the manager, and we played Wigan away, and I was sub. And we lost 5-0. So I can remember I was like coming back on the bus, and I was like, I had the ump again because the team had been beaten. I wasn't playing, and I thought, even like I say, I thought I should have played in that game, should have started. So I wasn't happy with that. So then we come into training Monday morning, a little bit doom and gloom, obviously, because we'd just been beaten 5-0 on the Saturday. And then straight after the training, I get called into the office by the owner, Simon Jordan. And he just told me, listen, I've just sacked Steve Kemp, Terry Bullivant. I want you to take over. I was like, wow. So completely, I was just a player. Like I say, I was a bit of a disgruntled player at the time. So this, I'd hadn't even, I'd done my sort of like level C, so my first coaching badge, but, nothing more than that. And so I was totally in shock, I had no idea what I was doing, to be perfectly honest. So I said to the chairman, listen, I'll come up to the Selhurst Park to see you after lunch, and I just need to get my head around this. So that's what I did. I went up and saw him, and we sorted a few things out. He sort of like originally told me to use a couple of the senior players, but they basically didn't want anything to do with it. They wanted to focus on playing. Yeah. So I felt I was sort of left on my own a little bit. Luckily, with a fitness coach was a guy called John Goodman, who was fantastic. He was brilliant, really good, and he helped me massively. So I'd never put on a training session, obviously at that stage, other than with young kids to do my level C. So he helped me massively, and then after a couple of days, I was able to bring in Stuart Gray, who just left Aston Villa. So he was out of work. He came in to be my assistant and coach, and Stuart was brilliant, fantastic, really, really good experienced coach. Was brilliant out on the grass, organised things and
Yeah.
how he structured the sessions, things like that. So I became player caretaker manager, which I loved, because what I used to do, I put myself sub, and then if we were winning like 1-0, I put myself on for the last 5 minutes. Go on, clap the crowd, sort of gee the boys up a little bit. And it worked every time. I did it 2 or 3 times and worked. And then I remember we played, I think it was Coventry at home. We're winning 1-0. And Stuart Gray's like, put yourself on. I'm like, no, we're comfy today. We're all right. And I didn't do it. And they equalised last couple of minutes. And we drew 1-1. So that, those extra 2 points could have made a world of difference. But it was a brilliant experience for me. And I absolutely loved doing that job. It's difficult. It would have been difficult to continue as player caretaker, to be honest. That takes a lot of doing. But the actual managing at Crystal Palace, and I remember my final game, there was a big bit of a furore around it, and we played Reading away, and we won 3-0 at the Majeski, and basically that team that I put out that final day was the team that then we went on and got Ian Dowie came in on the Monday after that. And that's the exact same team got promoted at the end of the season. We beat West Ham at the Millennium in Cardiff in the playoffs.
Very nice. Were you always thinking of becoming a manager post your football career? Was that the plan?
No, not to be honest. I knew I wanted to stay in football. As I said right at the top of the programme, football's all I've ever known. All I've ever done. Certainly. As a job since I left school at 16, that's all the only profession I've ever worked in. So I wanted to stay within the game. I was thinking I did quite a bit of media stuff. I quite enjoyed doing. Agency stuff was something that potentially I was looking at, and there were certain aspects of that job that I liked, but then it's such a cutthroat industry. Certain aspects of it that I didn't like, and I couldn't see myself doing. And then the coaching, managing was the third thing that I was very interested in. So when I was then at Palace, like I say, I became player caretaker manager. Dowie came in, and then I became player assistant manager for the rest of that season. We won the playoffs, and then my playing contract finished at the end of that season. We're now in the Premier League, so Dowie wanted me to stay on as assistant, but I had to obviously give up the playing side of it.
Yeah. And
like I say, I was then 33, and my hip I was struggling with it, and I knew I could have played for another couple of years, but I knew I wasn't doing myself any favours, and I think moving on, I would have done a lot of lasting damage, I think. I mean, I can hardly get up in the mornings now. I think we're all the same, Sasi, I think.
Yeah, same,
I think I would have been a lot worse if I'd have tried to play for another couple of seasons with this hip like it is. I think I would have been a bigger mess than I am now.
Let's talk about Fulham now, because of course you went to Colchester United for a season, and then you left for Fulham. You came back home in some ways.
Yeah, so I left Colchester, so I went in with Geraint Williams, who's a guy I knew through the Welsh setup. He needed an assistant, so I went to help him. Really enjoyed it. Great little club, Colchester. But then they sacked Geraint. I took over caretaker for a little bit, and then they brought in Paul Lambert as manager, so I left then. And then the chief scout at Fulham at the time, a guy called Barry Symons, was the chief scout at Palace when I signed for Palace. He'd then moved to Fulham under Roy Hodgson. So he phoned me up, said, "Listen, do you want to come in and do a bit of scouting work for us?" So I went in, and I ended up, that was the season Fulham got to the Europa League final. So I ended up doing loads of the European games for Fulham, just for expenses. I wasn't even on a contract start. I went in just literally doing all this stuff on expenses, and I started doing a little bit of work in the academy. I mean, I took they're under 11s or 12s away to Finland, which is brilliant. I love doing all that. And I started helping. I was still doing the scouting. I was sort of like, I now got on a contract, and it was a split contract, half the money for scouting and half the money for doing academy work. Gary Brazil was taking the under-18s at Fulham at the time. And I went in to assist Gary with the 18s. I got on very well with Gary, and then he sort of tipped me off one day. He said, "Listen, I'm moving back to Nottingham to work for the Premier League, but I'm going in a few months' time." He said, I think you should take over. And I was like, right, okay. I said, yeah, I'd fancy that. So we run it all by then the academy manager, Hugh Jennings, who sort of went with it. So what we did was Gary sort of phased himself out over like a 2-3 month period. He started doing less and less, and I started doing more and more with the under-18. So it was a really easy transition. When Gary finally left, I was virtually running it by then anyway. So it made it really easy. So Gary did me like a massive favour there, the way that we did it and everything. And then I became Fulham under-18s manager for a few seasons, and that was probably the jobbing, coaching, management that I've actually enjoyed the most out of all of them, for pure enjoyment and sort of job satisfaction. Because I think, these, again, I remember my time coming out of school as a 16-year-old, 16 to 18, the boys are so impressionable. And you can have such a huge effect on their lives and their careers at that age. And yeah, so I did that for a couple of years, and then I basically got pushed into taking the reserves, and I didn't want to, but the club sort of made me take the reserves, if you like. And then once I started doing that, I loved doing that. So a lot of the boys that I had with the 18s have come through, so I was working with the same players.
That's when we met, right? That's when we met. You were the reserves.
That's right, yeah. So
and
we
took you guys out to.
And, brought us out to Indonesia, Yogyakarta for a game played against the Indonesian All Stars, which was still, the most incredible trip. And then back to Singapore for a few days in a game there. So for my under 21s then, my Fulham under 21s, for a lot of these boys, that really was like the trip of a lifetime. To go out to Indonesia and to experience that, and then to Singapore. It was an amazing trip. So
did any of the boys? No, thank you. No, it was a real pleasure. I thought you guys really gave us a good time, and of course, the competition was great as well. Did any of the boys from that trip actually eventually make the first team?
I'm trying to think who came, because it was during an international break, so we had a few of our boys away on international duty. A few of them. A couple of them would have played, not that regularly, I don't think. But a few of them definitely would have played. I think Sean Kavanagh came, and he played for Fulham when I became first team manager. I remember we beat Norwich, we're top of the league, top of the championship, and we beat Norwich at Craven Cottage 1-0, and Sean Kavanagh scored the goal, and it was on his birthday as well, and his mum was over from Ireland. I'm pretty sure he played. I think Ronnie Minquist was there. I think German midfielder. He played a few games in the first team. Quite a few of those boys would have gone on and played a few first team games, but there was a bit before, because I don't think we didn't have the likes of Pat Roberts wasn't with us, Moussa Dembele, who were obviously all in the youth team, I think, at the time, so they didn't come with us. Yeah, but,
let's talk about your time in Sunderland, because I think a lot of people watched that show, Netflix show, Sunderland Till I Die. What was it like? Because did you know they were making a series on Sunderland?
Well, it was myself and Chris Coleman were they were just about to sign the contracts with Martin Bain, who was the chief executive. And Lois Jarvis was the lawyer, so all getting done, about to sign a contract, literally pens in hand, and then Martin, the chief exec, said, there's one more thing I forgot to tell you, which he didn't forget to tell us. He was just leaving it to the last minute. He said, obviously, the owner at the time was Ellis Shaw. He said, Ellis said, we've got to do this Netflix documentary. It's non-negotiable. We've just got to do it.
Yeah.
And so me and Chris, we had the pens in our hand, about to sign, all right then. So we knew it was happening, but he literally told us very last second before we signed the contracts, and so we had to work with it. So it actually wasn't as bad as we thought it was going to be. So Chris could still, they were always pushing. They wanted to be in the changing room all the time for team talks, and Chris was very adamant that he didn't want that.
Okay.
He felt that that change room is like a sanctuary, and what goes on in there should stay private between him and the players.
Yeah.
But they were pushing the guys, but we became friends with the guys who were making it as well, and they're really good lads. And so, although it was a little bit intrusive, it was also all right, and they were very careful how they did the filming. And I've never actually watched the first series.
I was going to ask you. I was going to ask you.
Yeah.
Did you watch it? No.
No, I'm not. I don't watch my old games, or I don't like watching myself on telly at all. But I've started watching the second series, and it's very well put together. I've got to say, the way they filmed it and made it, the second series certainly.
I tell you, I watched the first one, and obviously when Chris signed for as took over as manager, and then I see you at the background. I say, I know that guy. He's my friend. It was quite
amazing. It was a bit longer then.
Yeah, I know. Yes, it was. Yeah, but it was an amazing story, isn't it? I think to date, one of the best football series I've seen, and really shows why Sunderland is such a huge club, and what football really means to the people up there, right?
It's massive. It's huge, and it's such a shame as well, because it's a brilliant football club. A lot of good people there. It's just been badly run from the top, and lots of bad decisions have been made over a long period of time. And suddenly, we arrived. Martin Bain wasn't long before us, and you're left to pick up the pieces for what's gone on 3, 4, 5 years previously. And you can't get away with making bad decisions over a long period of time and it not coming back to bite you. Again, it's a funny one in football. Quite often, what you're seeing now is because of what's happened, like I say, 3, 4, 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Whether it be good or bad. So even quite often, suddenly things are going really well, and everyone's like, "Oh, this manager's brilliant." Well, I'm sure they've done a good job, but quite often it's about the work that they've done or previous people have done in the lead up to that. But people just see the here and now, and you're judged on immediate results, if you like, rather than maybe the work you've done, which is a bit of a shame, but that's football.
Oh, it's crazy. Just the way that the entire show, I felt, even as a neutral, you can't help but fall in love with Sunderland. It's just you start to support them, and while you know exactly what happened to Sunderland in the end, some part of you when you're watching said, "Oh, win that game or score that goal or don't get relegated." It's like, but what's the outcome anyway. It was just crazy, and I thought it was just the story was beautifully told, and what was. I mean, obviously now looking back, would you guys have done anything different?
No, I don't think so. Not really. I mean, I did an interview for one of the Sunderland podcasts a few weeks ago, and I think the guy was expecting me to be a little bit, I wish we'd never gone, or maybe a little bit bitter about it or something. But I'm not. I wasn't, and I'm not, because it was just it's a brilliant football club, and I still don't regret going for 1 second. I regret, obviously, how things panned out, and I regret we got relegated, but going, not at all, because it was a privilege to be part of that club, because it's a brilliant football club. As things transpired, like everything basically worked against us. I mean, I'm sure they show a lot of it in the documentary, but the things that were going wrong, it was just every day something was going wrong. And one of the most bizarre things, I mean, when we first signed, like Didier and Dong just didn't turn up after international duty. He just went missing for like 3 weeks. You're like, this can't happen. This is crazy. And so we had one thing after another, and they were paying people fortunes, players who were out on loan and stuff like,
Jack Rodwell was one.
Well, the Rodwell situation. Jack. We just wanted Jack. We were desperate for players, but Jack was never available to play. Didn't want to play. Whatever. There was all different stuff going on. But then he wouldn't leave to free up the money. We either wanted him to play, or to go so we could use his wages to bring someone else in, and he wouldn't do either. So you had a player sitting on big money. He was never available to play in the first team, but wouldn't leave either to free up the money. So that was a situation itself, and we couldn't, we never spoke to the owner at all. Chris never had received a text or an email or a phone conversation.
Really?
With Ellis
My
Shaw
word.
the whole time we were there, which is, again, bizarre. But I think, I'm not in fairness to him, but I think what happened was he'd had his fingers burnt so many times over previous years, and he had put a lot of money into the club. He just had enough of it.
Yeah.
And
he just wanted to let it go, right?
Just wanted out, yeah.
Yeah.
But we honestly believe with just a little bit of help, a little tiny bit of help, or a little bit of luck, a little bit of help, we would have kept the club up.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, we didn't get the luck and we didn't get the help.
Let's talk about your time in China. Chris took over in Hebei, right? Hebei Fortune it was. And what was your experience like? You were in Beijing Goan at one stage, were you?
No, we were based in Beijing. So
you're based in Beijing, okay.
We played against Beijing Goan, obviously. Yeah, we're based in Beijing. So Manuel Pellegrini was the manager before Chris took over. And one of the things that he'd done, he'd moved the training base into Beijing.
Okay.
And then Hebei was like the next province. So Hebei, we used to travel. It was about an hour and a half on the coach to get to the hotel in Hebei where the stadium was, Langfang, for home games. So it was only just outside Beijing, if you like. So it wasn't far. But by living in Beijing, being based in Beijing, he thought we could attract more foreign players and better foreign players. So I think, that was probably quite a good move on his part, and it certainly made our time there really good because we were living in Beijing, which was a brilliant city, and we could explore a little bit because when we went, we said obviously we're going, as a job, but we're going to go for the experience and sort of try and embrace the culture and everything, make it a whole experience rather than just go as a job and view it as such. We wanted to go and sort of enjoy the whole package, if you like, and that's what we did.
What did you think of the Chinese Super League then? Because a lot of money was coming into it at that time, right?
Yeah, so it was funny because you get world class players. So some of the foreign players. I mean, we had Mascherano.
Yeah.
Playing for us, who's incredible. Brilliant professional, great player. Lavezzi was there, and he was pretty much injured the whole time we were there, unfortunately, which was a bit of a shame because he was obviously a top player as well.
Yeah.
But so you'd get in games, you would get like some world class bits of skill, and then you would get some really horrific, maybe schoolboy defending or whatever, all within the same game. So it was quite sort of mixed, but you sort of got your head around that a little bit, and we really enjoyed it. I mean, the biggest thing that I got sort of satisfaction from was we felt we had a massive influence on our local players, on our Chinese players. And we worked a certain way, to a certain sort of method, and we sold it to them, if you like, and we gave them all these presentations, made sure it was all translated into Mandarin for them, because quite often you'd get your translators, so everything would be shown in English, and then the translator would just
lost in translation. Yeah.
But so you can lose stuff in translation. So we made sure we got the presentations put up in Chinese or Mandarin as well, so they could actually see it visually as well as hear it. So we made sure everything was done with the Chinese players, the local players in mind, sort of thing, and they were brilliant. I've got to say, our Chinese boys really bought into what we were trying to do, and it was great. We really enjoyed it and the impact that we were able to have with them.
How would you sum up your time in China then?
Well, we went in, like I say, in the June, halfway through the season. I think the team were 11th or 12th when we came in. And then the end of that first season, we finished 6th. And we had loads of injuries and we're trying all different things. So it had a real big impact. And then typical football, we were told there'll be money to invest and everything in the summer, but there wasn't. and the wage bill was being cut, and this, that, and the other. So it then became very difficult. The start of the next season, I mean, there was a few problems like during the pre-season, like some of the bonuses hadn't been paid for the players, so there was a bit of unrest there. Lavezzi came back in the first stage pre-season, broke down, had to go and have an operation on his knee, so he wasn't never available for us. It was our, he's the highest money earner in the Chinese league, so a lot of our budget was going on him. He was not available. They signed a Brazilian striker, Marcao, who they signed him with a hernia. So we didn't see him to our last couple of games either. So again, it's one of those things. Sometimes things just transpire against you.
Yeah.
And the start of the second season, I think we played Beijing Guan, SIPG, who were the top two teams, all within our first 3 or 4 games, and we narrowly lost. We should have won both of those games, and we lost both in the end by some crazy stuff going on. Actually, yeah, things just sort of went against us. We were playing well in games, dominating games, but losing. And so 7 games in, we ended up getting sacked. But like I say, we walk away, and I'm very proud of the job we did there. And like I say, especially the effect that we had on our local players, the Chinese players. And we still keep in touch with quite a lot of them. In fact, Chris was in Dubai, and one of the boys who actually we sold started the second season. He went to Dalian. But we got on really well with him, and Chris bumped into him in Dubai, and he took Chris and his family out for dinner.
Oh, yeah.
We still speak to quite a few of the boys there. There's some brilliant people. Some of the players, some of the staff there were fantastic. We met some really good people.
Well, thank you so much, Kit, because we've been talking for almost past an hour now. Very interesting, and I must say that you have had a very, very colourful career. And what's next for you then?
I don't know. Another challenge would be really good. So I've just been out. I went out to India quite recently. So Martin Bain, who was the chief exec at Sunderland, is now chief exec of the Indian League.
Yep.
So I went out to see him a few months ago. And help him do a bit of work with. They hosted a big conference for all the managers in the league.
Yeah.
So I went out there to India, and I really enjoyed that. That's again, I think one of the emerging leagues, and could obviously, if they get things right, could go on and become a big player in world football. So yeah, I don't know. Just another challenge, Sasi, really, and it could be anywhere in the world, literally. I say, having been to China now, I've thoroughly enjoyed that experience.
Maybe Southeast Asia next. Maybe Southeast Asia next.
Definitely, absolutely, mate. No, I'd love to. Like I say, I'm open to any offers, really, and just again, I like a project. If I think there's somewhere you can go in and you can really have an effect. If someone's looking to build something, maybe an owner who's looking to build something, I love that, and the feeling of being able to do that is brilliant, and that's something I've always really enjoyed. So,
all right,
yeah, we'll see.
If you guys are watching,
open to offers.
Yeah, if anyone's watching, any owner or any club is watching, Kit Symons is available. So yeah, give me a call. I've got his number. Anyway, thank you so much, Kit. I wish you all the best, and hopefully we can see you in this part of the world fairly soon.
Definitely. Love to, mate. Love to. Stay safe, everybody.
Thank you.